Am I live? Well, may not be live for long after this one. I don't know. uh, Anybody recognize this monstrosity? Let's see. Okay, so I'm doing this. I'm streaming this the live so that I'm being lazy. I don't want to make an edited video, but I do want to. This kind of goes along with my current little rants that I'm on about container homes, and this is specifically not about containers necessarily, but kind of. Okay, so I guess where should I start? I should start here. If you know, if you haven't watched Andrew's, let me go to his channel. Andrew Camarata, I think is his name. Andrew Camarata. Let me put a link to his channel. So I'm going to recommend that you subscribe to him, okay? Put that there. Hello, Cynthia. I'm gonna, before I start, I want to make sure that people understand that I like Andrew and I like his channel. There's his business in New York. This is his channel. And I've been following this his build in New York these days, trying to get this set up, okay? And it's it's a lot of stuff. Let me get here, get this back, get that here,
connection. Plus this.
Get this over
all
here.
Right, I'm trying to get next to where video
we can see the roof.
And I'll also put a plate.
But what it is Andrew's built this container home. It's like a castle almost. And I love his dogs. It's they're neat. And I like him. Okay, now he mainly does. I think he's really good at heavy equipment work. And if you go to his homepage, his webpage, he says property maintenance, Camarata's property maintenance. And I've actually offered to contacted him if I can get my, hello Tony, it's Andy from Dallas, Texas. Hey Andy, I'm trying to keep up with the comments and talk at the same time. But he, I think he's really good at, I meant to show you the roof, here we go. This is his castle container castle, and this is specifically, let's zoom in on this. This is specifically what I'm gonna try to tell people about today, and it's really kind of hard to show. But you'll have to kind of watch. Let's see if I can go back here, kind of give you an idea of what he's doing. Here we go. He's building this roof system over this container home because, and he mentions in this video, that the concrete decks are leaking, and of course that's what concrete decks do if you're trying to use them as a roof. And so what I did with this morning was I actually contacted him a while back. Maybe he didn't get my email, and I actually offered to do this for him, actually for free. I actually offered to help him design this roof system. Now this was before I hadn't seen all this steel work. I drew all this steel work this morning, okay? And I'm trying to mimic what he's got, and it's pretty close, okay? My main concern with this is obviously structural issues. Now, again, let me say this again. I like Andrew. I like his channel. But I think sometimes people bite off more than they can chew, or that they're qualified to do. I'm a licensed general contractor, and I have been for very long, a licensed general contractor for 20 years, and I've been in the business for 40 years. Tennessee didn't even have a contractor's licensing law when I started in 1978, okay? So I'm not just some jackleg that's pulling out my old computer and trying to do whatever. What I'm trying to do is show people that there are alternatives, and there are people that can help you. There are professionals that can help you, okay? And one thing I thought was kind of funny, I found this guy, and he has a set of drawings. And the point of that is that all this really should have been planned out, really to the T. I mean, from every structural point, every point connection on this should have been started out on day one. There should have been like a blank piece of property over here with structural columns coming up and footings going down, because these containers are not, they're only structural on the corners, okay? They don't carry loads. Like the roof of these containers can't carry this kind of load. The only way that these loads would work is if these point loads went all the way down to the ground. Like he does have some of the columns like this going all the way down. And this is kind of a long story. You'd have to go back, and I recommend you go back and need to talk to you about a 6-truck car. Yeah, and see, one of the reasons I'm doing this, Andy, is because I want people to know that, you know, and I don't mean to underestimate people's intelligence, but I want people to know that just because you see something on YouTube doesn't mean it's right, actually. There's so many things, what can I say, improper. I'm going to try to be as nice as I can because I like Andrew and I like his channel. But this is one big money pit, I'm telling you, okay? So what I did was I went through the trouble, and I actually offered to do this for free for Andrew. And he either didn't see my email or ignored me or thought I was being a butt or something like that, okay? I guess you can take me that way. But my point is that I've spent all of my life learning how to build things, okay? You can go to my Artist and Construction channel and see how long that I have been training. And this is the thing. I don't claim to be a brain surgeon. I don't claim to be a rocket scientist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a dentist. I'm nothing but a builder. But I can freaking build, okay? I can do that, and I know how to do it, and I consider myself an authority on it, okay? And now that sounds arrogant, but again, that's all I know how to do. I don't know how to do anything else except make YouTube videos, and that's easy. So I was going to go through the trouble, let's go back to his channel, of trying to draw all of this and just show some of the issues. I mean, one of the first issues you see here is that he's using steel beams for rafters. You know, in construction, we have these best practices, okay? And we use beams and girders for beams and girders, and then we use posts for posts. We use valley rafters for valley rafters, and we use rafters for rafters, okay? Now he's basically framed this entire roof with steel beams that weigh 16 to 20 pounds per linear foot, okay? Let me see if I can get all the way to the end here again. And here's that's not really a good angle. But these beams are like 40 feet long, okay? So you can imagine taking, the video is so long I can't get to the end. Here we go. But just go watch this video. You can see all of these rafters. Look how each of these rafters are over, let's see, that's 20, 25, they're about 40 feet long, okay? So you can imagine that's 600 to 800 pounds a piece, okay? You can get a whole stack of OSB for less than 600 pounds, okay? You could get a stack of OSB sheeting for your roof that would practically cover 50 sheets would be 15, 1,600 square feet. Okay, so for the weight of one of these rafters, steel beams, you could just about sheet this entire part of the roof. Okay, so again, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying I want people to know when they see this stuff that this is not really the proper way to do this. Okay, let me check the comments and see how we're doing, because I want to stay. Let's see. So true. I agree wholeheartedly. I have slung a lot of steel. There you go. Now see, the steel workers are going to know this. The steel workers are going to know that. And I worked in, out of the 40 years of my career, I was a project manager for an architecture firm, a large architecture firm. We did projects all over the world. We did projects in San Francisco, France, and all over the United States. Okay, and mostly those were tech. Those were like data centers. But my job as a project manager who knew how to build things was to go in and work with structural engineers to figure out structural systems. And then the architect would come up with a pretty picture, and we would go in and design the structural systems to support the pretty picture. That's how it works. So structural engineers are not architects, and architects are not structural engineers, and that's the most important thing you can keep in mind. Is that in one of the comments I asked Andrew, did you have structural engineering help you, and do you have stamp drawings? Because, and this was way back, right? This was way back before he even started this part of it. And I think he said he did, and I think he got mad at me because I asked him if he would share them with his viewers. Because I was curious, because first of all, most structural engineers don't like dealing with residential work in the first place because it's just so uncommon. And I know a structural engineer friend of mine told me that the insurance issues were difficult to work out for residential work, and that there were so many basic rules of thumb for commercial work that it was basically, pieces of cake for them, right? So let me see if I can gather my thoughts here. Let me go back and see if there's any comments. And add snow load. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to get into that in just a second. You're right. The general idea behind structures is that you don't make the roof structure itself heavier, or you try not to, than what kind of you have two different things. You have dead loads and live loads. Dead loads are the materials that you use to build the structure with, right? Live loads are snow, rain, wind, seismic, all of that. And we're going to get into seismic and wind here in just a little bit, okay? I don't mean for this to be an all-encompassing video, but I'm hoping that if Andrew's willing to lower his pride a little bit, of course it's a little late now, he's already got it framed up with a hell bunch of beams. But I'm going to show you basically what I came up with. The general idea was okay. I hate to keep rotating this, but I'm trying to get it in a view that I'm going to turn off the steel that I think was, well, all of the rafters that you have are unnecessary and overkill and too heavy. So I didn't even spend the time to draw those because honestly, if you go back, here's where I was looking at researching snow loads for New York, because that's where he is. And here's my rafter tables. You see, I put a lot of time into trying to help him, and I think it's just going to go to waste. But anyway, you can see all of these. Who was it that said they were a steel worker? Look at these spacings on these rafters. Okay, it's I'm not being critical. I'm just saying there's nothing consistent about this, and it's kind of scary. Let's go to, this message is held for review. Did somebody get mad? Now I'm expecting to get a lot of so 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 Dig, you're familiar with. I'm going to show your comment because I'm not hiding or deleting any comments. I guess YouTube does that to some degree. But here's the basic thing, and there's so many thoughts going through my head. It's hard to collect my thoughts on this because there's so many things that are just I could have spent. I literally spent. So far I have spent less than 8 hours on this whole project. Okay, I drew the whole building. I didn't draw the back because I didn't think it was necessary. I basically, from his videos, gathered how big his house was because I know these containers are probably 40 feet long. He's got a 12 by 12 door, all this stuff. He's got this castle wall. And so from there, I was able to deduct basically the structure of his house. And I think I've come up with some accurate spans. So I'm going to turn off the steel. I'm going to turn off what I'm turning off is the silly steel beams for, well, I think it's all of it's silly, but what is not outrageous is the post and beam aspect of it, okay? You could, if I was going to build this the way that he did, the way he was approaching it, I probably would have used steel post and beams too. But that's as far as I would have gone. And I'm going to show you, I actually spent several hours building this pretty roof, okay? These are wood eye joists. Now, I know the first thing somebody's going to say is, oh, that's a lot of maintenance. Andrew actually said in this video, if you go back to it, he actually said that he wanted to build a roof that was fireproof. Okay, so I don't want to have to go into every lesson of construction, but Dig, you will know this. Yeah, I thought, I know you're not mad. I thought it was one of his people coming in making comments, but if all you have to do is research steel or wood beams in a fire, and you'll realize that the performance of, here's just the first one I come up on, you'll understand that it's true that a wood beam is safer than a steel beam in a fire. Well, let's see, that's the question. The thing is that under heat, and I'm not going to read this whole article, but any article that's truthful at all will show you that, what does this say? Fire Connect 61 result compared to fire endurance of, yeah, you look at a glue lamp versus blah, blah, blah. After 30 minutes, the steel beam deflected more than 35 inches and collapsed. The test furnace ending the test, okay? So to say you want to, it just, and again, I like Andrew, but this shows inexperience and lack of knowledge that steel is not, to fireproof steel, the next thing you can do is Google fireproof steel. And I'm having you do it because I already know the answer. And you'll find pictures. It should say fireproofing steel because there's no such thing as fireproof steel. What you have to do basically, and I'm not going to get an image. Am I going to get an image? Yeah. They have coatings. Here's a good picture. They have coatings that you can spray on steel to give it a rating, but it's still not fireproof. If it gets hot enough, it'll eventually, this just slows down the process. So, I mean, there's so many things about this. So the reason I brought that up was because I'm learning. Okay, cool. The reason I brought that up was because two things. I know somebody's going to say, well, it's less fireproof. Well, it's not less fireproof, and also maintenance. Don't you think you're going to have to paint all this steel? And at the end of the video, I wish I could adjust it. I can't really adjust it because it's so long I can't get my cursor to go to the very end. There's a place in here. Look at this. I mean, it's a. What concerns me about this is I'm trying to get to where it shows the plate still. Anyway, he's going to use this. Here we go, right there. Okay, and then he gives a hint. He says this is a hint. He's going to use this plate steel for roofing. I don't know if he's going to overlap it or what, but you're going to have to. He's going to have to paint this steel. You can't just put steel up, a steel structure and steel plates, these big steel plates up for roofing without having to paint it. It'll be a big rust bucket. And I just did a video about our big rust buckets, which are these containers. And I wasn't even talking about Andrew's home. I wasn't even thinking about his house when I made that video. I was thinking about this other architect who was, anyway, that's a long story. So the idea that you can use this steel and there's no maintenance and it's fireproof is ridiculous. It's going to be more trouble. And after I show you what I suggest for this, and this is what I was going to suggest, all he had to do was say, "Yes, Artisan Tony." By the way, he's got this kind of flying gable effect going on, which is kind of cool. And I was trying to mimic that with my wood eye joist. And so, by the way, I mean, I did offer, he probably didn't see my offer, and that's fine. I offered to do this for free, but every piece of this framing should have been laid out first. Everything. These are two LVLs, 14-inch LVLs. They don't look like it. I haven't spent that much time. These are wood eye joists, okay? Now, the reason I use wood eye joists is because the spans are kind of long. They're up to not like 19'6". And if you'll go to, like BCI has, let me go up here. Let me go to this. Oh, shoot, I accidentally clicked on it. Let me go back up here. This is just one company. And for these long spans for roofs, here you go. These are some products that we used to call them wood eye joists. They're called eye joists or whatever. They look like, they kind of mimic a steel beam, but they have different flange widths. The ones I like are 2.5 or 2.25 inches. 2 5/16. Yeah, those split the difference. You can see up here. They got the different heights and widths. And obviously, the taller they are and the wider the flange, the more load they'll carry. These are great for roofs. They're lightweight. You could carry one of these 20 or 30 feet long by yourself, okay? Try to carry a steel beam that long by yourself. You can't do it. And then a roll down here. And of course, here's all your framing details. They're easy to build with. Let me get down here. And all this stuff seems kind of confusing and difficult, but it's really not. It's not that difficult. You just have to have experience in using them. So here you get down to your roof span tables. And I found that, where was it? Was it 16-inch? We do have these crazy snow loads in California we have to deal with, okay? So we got to look down here. I'm looking at 50 pounds. Let's see. 19 feet 7. Yeah, a 14-inch. And what you have to do is you have to look at the slope, okay? And you have to look at your span. And say you've got a 20-foot span. You follow yourself and you got a low slope. He's got like a 3.5, 12 slope. So you follow this down until you get to your span and then check over here to look at the loading, live load, dead load, okay? And this column right here, it shows snow 115%. So I'm not suggesting that you don't get help. And I'm not saying I've solved this. I would spend more time making sure that I had the right ones, specified the right joist. But what I have here basically would work because the longest span you have is this one right here, from here to here. And I actually, You could use a smaller member. If this was my structure, I'd do a cost analysis to see if it wouldn't be worth putting another beam span, another row here of columns, to take so that you could use smaller. And see, that's the whole point with roof framing. What you want are lightweight members that are that are spread out, that are spreading the load over the length of your beam. And what I'm showing here is an LVL, two LVLs. I think I've got 16 inches, which actually, see, this should be in the steel layer that you could turn off. Because see, with this double LVL up here, these columns would then go up to, let's see if I can fix that right quick. And see, you just eliminated a whole, about 60 feet of steel beam. And that's what you're trying to do, is get this to a point to where it's manageable. The reason these wood eye joists work better butting into this is because they have hangers. Let's see if I can find it right quick. I'm trying to keep this not so long, but wood eye joists hangers. Uh-oh, I got to turn my phone off. Hey, I'm live streaming. Can I call you back, or?
Yeah, I was just letting you know I'm in Knoxville. So.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Love you. Be careful. My wife is on her way back from Wofford seeing Alex. But they have these hangers. You see, here's a good picture. And this is the best way to do these, is to take these hangers, which are, $4 or $5 a piece, and you hang them off your beam, and they have this big seat down here for your wood eye joist to sit in. I don't show them because I wasn't going to spend, if he had just said, hey Tony, that's cool, I'd like to have your help, I would have done all this. I was showing the hangers. You also have these, what we call hurricane ties. You would have a metal clip down here tying the rafter to the beam. You would also have a treated plate that we would Tex screw. Let me get some comments. Let me look at the comments. Entire building well together is very... Yeah, I'm like you, Dig. I mean, I'd much rather see bolted connections. This all could have been... I mean, whenever we build, I've built, I don't know, I've been over 40 years how many buildings I've built. I mean, every steel building everything that we ever had that had steel was fabricated. In other words, we would do the drawings. It was planned out. I would consult with my engineers. I would say, what size is this, a W10 by 20, 30, whatever. I'd get my steel size. I'd get my column size. Is this a 6-inch, with a 1/4-inch wall thickness, or what is it? I'd get all that together. I'd draw it out just like I did here, and then I would do construction drawings. I would send it to my steel fabricator. He would weld all this up. He would put plates. I don't show them here, but he'd have top plates. They would have holes in them. These beams would have holes. Everything would be ready for putting it on erection. I was going to say erection, but it sounds bad. Putting it together. Dig knows what I'm talking about when I say erection, but so I'm checking the comments. I appreciate y'all commenting, because sometimes I'm just kind of stuck on here by myself. But so, and the other thing we would have done is, like I said, we would have taken a wood plate, and we would have Tex screwed it. We call it Tex screwing. They're basically self-drilling screws that you can drill it. They'll literally drill into these flanges of these beams. We would have attached a wood plate. If I can get to the end over here. Golly. So there's several different ways you could do this. You can use metal connectors, and some people even cut a bird's mouth in this. I don't like cutting the bird's mouth because I don't like this webbing being exposed to my plate. It's just kind of wimpy. So I'll use a metal connector and do it like this. But I would have tech screwed this plate down to this beam, and then there's no welding. There's literally should be very little welding at all on this whole project. When you have welds, you have maintenance issues. If you don't think your welds are going to rust through your paint, this is going to be a maintenance nightmare to have all that steel, all those steel beams, rusting, and there's no way. The only way you could even paint them now, they're not even primed. That's the other thing. When we have these steel beams and columns come to our job, they're primed. We have them primed. So all they have to do is be painted. You take this steel and you erect it and you let it sit out in the weather, in a day it's going to have a haze of rust on it, okay? The only way he'll ever be able to paint this stuff is if he puts, what is that coating, dig, you can put on, I forgot what it's called. It's something, is it something oxide? Excuse me, I'm getting a cold. But it's a coating that you'd have to put on the steel. Oh, my eyes are watering. That basically converts the rust into something you can paint. So the fireproofing issues, the maintenance issues are really unfounded. This is the way we've been framing roof systems for decades, hundreds of years. Not with wood eye joists, but I have literally been framing with wood eye joists for at least 30 years. I'm pretty sure they've been out for that long. And of course, we've been using LVLs forever too. LVLs are probably this doesn't look like an LVL, but it is. That's a doubled LVL. And they also, they make hangers for valley rafters too. They're angled. They have a kind of a joint in them, and you can kind of bend them around and fasten it. So there literally is no reason. Now, as far as the metal roofing, what we would do, one thing I forgot to talk about was, or draw, but let me see how fast it would take me to just copy. I need to turn on the heat. It's cold in my office. Let me paste this right quick. One of the things you can do, and these wouldn't be treated, 2x4s, is if you don't want to put solid decking, you can use these purlins. That's one of the questions I ask in the comments. You going to let your roof span that 3 or 4 feet? And then I realized at the end of the video, and these 2x4s would be run up here, at 2 feet. I would put them on 24-inch centers, times 10 of them or whatever. You see, they would go up like that, and then you'd fasten your metal roof down. You could fasten your metal roof down to that, right? So imagine, or you could just use OSB sheeting, on it. And what I like to use is the R panel. Any more comments? Well, thank you, Patrice. That's right, phosphoric acid. Yeah, that's right. Imagine everything on that entire roof having to be treated with that before you paint it. It's crazy. But again, I'm not criticizing Andrew. I just think he just was a little too stubborn to ask for help. You can't be too stubborn to ask for help on this stuff. You just gotta lower your pride. I don't know if y'all have ever seen this R panel. It's one I like. The last 2 houses that I have built. See if I can find it right quick. Yeah, here it is. I've talked about this in several of my videos. This is an excellent roofing panel. And I like the galvanum color because it's light and it'll reflect heat well. It's also got an 1.25 inch rib height, so you can use it for like really low pitches. I think they up to 1 in 12. Yeah, I hear 1 in 12. So this right here, this roofing would be, run up, this way, and they're 3-foot sheets, 3 foot wide, and you just go down screwing them, and at every purlin you would just put your 3 or 4 screws across these, and it wouldn't take. Probably in a day and a half, 2 days, you could have this roof done. It's pretty simple. But let me turn off. I want to undo the purlins. So anyway, I mean, what can I say? I just want, what my main concern is that people are going to see Andrew's big castle house and think that it's there's where I was looking at my snow loads, and where am I going here? Normal people, not most of the people in my comment section, because they seem to have a pretty decent amount of knowledge, but people who don't have any knowledge will look at the video and say, oh, that's what I need. I need some rusty containers. I'll make me a house out of them. And then I'll do this. I'll put this big roof. And what's funny is, this was like 6 or 8 months ago. I made a comment about him pouring these concrete decks over this and thinking it was going to be watertight. And especially this connection right here, where the slab goes against this metal siding, the metal container. Concrete shrinks, okay? As it hydrates, it shrinks, and that's why you get cracks, okay? So this is a big leak place right here, unless you take like a butyl, caulk and caulk it. Even then, the roof doesn't have any pitch to it, so it's just flat. So what's funny in the video, and this video is very telling, because in this one video he talks about all the problems that he's running into with this type of construction, and every problem that he's run into is basically just a lack of experience. And again, I like Andrew. I think he's cool. I think he should have just got help. He should have just asked for help. I would have told him I would do it for free. So I think a lot of it, again, if I was going to, I would never attempt to do surgery on someone. I would obviously get help with that. And I think, and people say, well, that's an extreme example. No, it's not. You're talking about, can you imagine how much weight of materials is on this building just from all the steel that's on there? Now you're going to lay sheets of steel on top of that for a roof system, for roofing, cladding. It's just amazing. Now, and one of the things that concerns me are these point loads out here on this concrete slab. And this right now, so by having that big gable up there, well, with this being, I guess this column right here's got the load on it. These columns over here, though, have the other part of this load. So he's got some concentrated loads. Well, at every column, there's a point load. Those point loads should go all the way down to the ground. And the ones I'm curious about are this row right here. I hope he's not expecting that these containers can carry those point loads, because they're not. In a container, if you don't know, this bottom rail on these containers carries the floor load, but as far as the loads for the whole container, they're all on the corners. They have these steel corner posts, right? So the 4 corners carry the entire 60,000 to 70,000 pounds. So if you go out here in the middle of this, and what concerns me is that he's going to have a lot of cracking on this slab and these walls. I asked him in a comment why he didn't just frame these walls up out of steel studs. and put I don't know, some kind of metal siding on them, because he's got all this metal siding. And of course, I think I think he's hid my comments, because they're probably mistaken as being smart, but I wasn't. I'm just trying to help. Paint is no longer acceptable code for steel. It needs epoxy coatings on upward facing surfaces. Yeah, I was just talking about as a minimum, especially in residential work, you see people painting a lot of steel, and that's the thing. I guess my point was, and I think one of the things that made him maybe hide my comments in the beginning was that I asked him. I didn't know anything about him when I first started watching his channel, and I started to see him build things. I said, "Oh, that's cool. Are you a general contractor, or do you have a contractor's license?" No answer, right? Well, he doesn't. And again, I'm not saying that's everybody has the right to build their own home. Okay, every state that I know of allows you. I know Tennessee does. It allows you to build your own home, act as your own contractor once every 2 years. So basically, you don't have to have a contractor's license to build your own home, but it's a good idea to get help with structural issues. Okay, and this is one reason why. So I'm not criticizing him. I think he's got some kahunas the size of bowling balls, because I mean, honestly, to take on a project like this without having experience is pretty brave, actually. And I I kind of admire his tenacity. And I mean, if you look at the guy, he's a hard worker. He kicked butt. He kicks butt when it comes to the work ethic. I mean, the guy is just. I mean, I watch every video he puts out. Right. I wish I had a grading guy down here like him. Uh, Several of my grading guys that I use for grading are just lazy. But yeah, powder coating. We have like our uh, most of our steel that's going to be exposed, to like handrails, be powder coated, or columns that are going to be, out in the public. If we have like steel columns we're using for structural stuff that's not going to be exposed, we have it primed by the guys in the shop who are fabricating it. But that's the issue. I mean, you can't even take a piece of steel out on a job without it rusting. It'll be rusted in a day. I mean, you just can't. Once it's exposed to the moisture in the air, you're done. So anyway, does anybody have any comments or questions? Anything else? Is this first story a large garage? Yeah, he's got a shop in here, and he'll pull his bobcat or his skid steer, whatever, in there and work on it. He's got this area is basically a shop. He's got shop tables and all his tools and benches and stuff, and it's pretty cool. I mean, again, I'm not criticizing the guy. I'm just saying, you know, don't. I'm letting other people know that it's not the proper way to build, and you need to ask for help. That's all I'm saying. And he should have just simply asked for help. Oh, one more thing, and I'll get off my soapbox. In residential construction, I mean, the building code requires bracing for buildings. I mean, one of the things that we would have to do is if we would have a hard time convincing the building inspector that we wouldn't have to have any bracing on this thing. And I'm not talking about the bracing that he's got coming off of here for these cantilevered beams. I'm talking about steel rods coming from here, and Dig will know what I'm talking about, down, and I should have drawn these, but I didn't. But from at the corners coming down. One of the coolest projects I got to work on was out in San Francisco. Now these rods would be probably an inch in diameter, so my little line is wimpy. But you really should have diagonal bracing on this. I mean, this is a structure up here. This is a, I mean, these should be at the corners. You should have diagonal bracing coming down this way. You know, all the way around, at all the corners. Okay, and that's just common building practices. If you had walls, if he was going to build steel studded walls in here, he would have a sheeting on the outside that would act as the bracing on the corner. He would have an OSB or some kind of sheeting that would take the place of these diagonal braces. Okay, but when you have an open structure like this, you have to substitute that bracing for something. That sheeting for something. So the only reason I doubt that he doesn't have any sort of drawings that he's working from is that first, he's never shown them, and secondly, a lot of this, he hasn't talked about doing it. Maybe he's going to do it. I don't know. But I would have certainly put up my bracing before I start putting these tens of thousands of pounds worth of steel beams up for rafters. So, and also, if we were framing this conventional framing, in other words, if we had walls here, those walls would be braced off while we were building the roof system. You would have diagonal braces going everywhere. I mean, there would be braces coming down here, there would be braces coming down there. There would be the fact that he's got all these steel columns and beams kind of negates that, but still, permanent bracing is going to have to be thought of. Let's see if there's any more comments. Put a guy in the first story. Okay. So, again, I recommend his channel. I watch it faithfully. He does a good job on the things that he has, knowledge of. But this was one of those where, again, I don't know. So I guess I'll end it unless I have any more questions. I was trying to think of all the issues that I've gone through over the years. I was going to mention had the opportunity to go out to San Francisco. What year was that? It was the year after the earthquake out there. Was this in the late 80s? I can't remember. And perfect example of why you need diagonal bracing. All the buildings as they were being repaired, they were retrofitting them with these huge diagonal braces in the walls to counteract seismic forces in the future from any future hurricanes, earthquakes, hurricanes too. So the point is building needs to be braced off in every direction. So this direction the building needs to be braced off in. This direction the building needs to be braced. Obviously vertically it would be braced with columns and beams. So there are many different forces that act on a building. And you get into an earthquake situation, the earth can be twisting and bumping up and down, and winds. If this thing stays open, it's like a huge aircraft wing. It's like a big kite. There's going to be wind flying through here. Okay? Of course, that's probably the least of his worries because he's got 1 million tons of steel. The only thing I'm concerned about, again, is the weight of all that on this existing part of the building. So, let's see. Got any more comments? Hey, Tony, I've only been subbed to Andrew for about 6 months, and I marveled at his container castle. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Again, I'm not criticizing the guy. I think it's cool, but there's so many issues that, you got building codes for the main thing. In our town, we have energy codes. we're in southeast Tennessee, and we have to have an R38 in our attics. I know that sounds crazy. We have to have R19 in the walls now. So on a container building, the only way you can get those insulation values is to go in. And this is another video. I don't know if you saw, Nick, if you saw my video before this one. I talk about that, how by the time you frame up, by the time you do all the framing that's going to allow for proper insulation values, then all that framing could have just been wall framing and ceiling framing, and you didn't really even need the container. Basically, all you're buying when you buy a container is the siding that you would have put on the outside. And actually, this is kind of crappy siding. I mean, if I was going to build a house, a two-story house that had metal siding, I would buy metal sheets that would go all the way down. I would have framed this two-story wall out of 2x6. 2x6 is at 16 inches on center. Then I would have had my sheeting. I mean, there's so many things wrong with containers as buildings to live in. It's really kind of silly. It's a reverse way to build. In construction, we frame things. We frame up walls. We put sheeting on. We put our Tyvek on. We put our windows and doors in. We tape around those windows and doors, and then we put our siding on. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because that is the sequence that you should take to build a home properly so that it doesn't leak and there's no air infiltration. Well, the first thing you do when you get a container home is think about how you're going to get doors and windows in it. And most people take a torch and they just cut an opening in it. Well, the next thing they have to do is figure out, how am I going to stick a window in there and get it properly sealed, taped, and caulked so it's not going to leak. And every person I've talked to that has one of these containers says they leak. Everyone. The reason that you can get them for $3,000 to $5,000, or even a little cheaper, is because all the seals are gone on the doors. They've got holes in them. It's just they're a mess. And my point in the previous video was that for all the trouble that you go through, you're spending more money building a small, tiny house. So anyway, I should have got off on that rant, but I did. But yeah, I like Andrew's channel. I'm kind of repeating myself now, so unless anybody's got any questions, I'll end it, because I feel like if anybody else can think of any other questions, or I have something I haven't covered. I mean, my impression is that he plans on leaving this open up here. Maybe he's planning on enclosing it. I don't know. I don't know how I don't think so, because he built these kind of these walls up here, and they're got that decorative castle effect. So my impression that all this is going to be left open up here. All right, well, thanks, Dig. Thanks, everybody, for coming and asking questions. It's a lot more interesting when you have people making comments. And if there's no other questions, we'll end it here. If you need any help from me, I'll be glad to help. If the project is rather big, we do charge a little bit to do full-blown construction drawings. You can go visit my website, atdrafting.com, and that's obviously Artisan Tony. AT stands for Artisan Tony. atdrafting.com, and you can see some of the projects we've helped people with. I've got several projects right now out where I'm doing consulting work for people, building different projects other than my local projects where I'm a general contractor. So that's one of the services I help people with. And this is the kind of thing I help people with, So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming and for watching. See ya.